I said, God, give me a sign. He gave me 5. He said, watch for the pride. Envy and lies. He said, don't reach for hands. If there's a tide, don't tell them that you love them. If they ain't tried, none. They said I couldn't come now. I came in like Juggernaut. They said I couldn't.
Welcome back to True Kings Podcast. I'm your host, LJ Johnson. Today, I'm here at my bro, Enrique. Welcome back to the podcast. He was on here actually about a year ago, and now he's back once again, to help with this process right here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me again and give me another chance. I'm glad to be here one more time, for a second time, and for more times to come.
Yeah, I'm happy you're back, man. I know they're going to be happy you're back, but today we're essentially going to be talking about the things we have essentially learned in our relationship with the Lord, what brought us to Jesus and things of that nature. And so without further ado, let's really get into this conversation. It's going to be a really fun conversation, y'all. I'm very excited for it. So, what was kind of the moment where you kind of realized that Jesus was the way you really wanted to go in your life?
Well, there's been many instances that the Lord has called me to get close to Him. But I think the most recent one, the one where I was like, I really, really need to get close to Him, was when me and my most recent relationship, we broke up a few months ago. And I realized that there was a lot of things I was doing completely wrong. A lot of mindset that was just not there, and other things that happened in my life. I decided to just give my life to the Lord and see where He takes me, because as soon as I let myself go and gave everything to the Lord, my life has gotten a lot better. I felt more peaceful, less stressed, and I felt like everything has just worked out better for me because God has a plan, and I learned that.
Yeah. Things like that are kind of hard because, I don't know, you feel like in moments like that, a lot of people think it's very easy to get over something like that, but it's really not. And that is a time where, everyone who knows me personally knows I went through something similar, and that really made me start seeking the Lord. I've had a relationship with the Jesus for a year and a half now, since July 2023, and it's the reason I started building my relationship with Him is because if you remember the last time we were on here, we were so different than compared to now. But I specifically was still really angry about everything that had happened in the past, and really angry at the world, and I just wanted things to change. And I started feeling the Lord pull to me, Jesus pull on me and say, follow me, you know what I'm saying? And that was just something that was very, very big to me, ever since I've been building it, and it's just been, my relationship been getting better and better and better. But in terms of the things that, so you would say you've been building a relationship with Him for the last few months?
Yes.
Okay. The thing is, you never really do stop building your relationship with Him. It never stops. It's like you're essentially married to the Lord. You're married to Him.
It's a life commitment.
Yeah, I mean, you never. It's like any other marriage, just about, except, like I said, this is one's with God. But in every other marriage, your relationship never stops growing. You have to constantly figure out new ways to build your relationship, and it's kind of the same way with the Lord. Because I'm gonna sit there and tell you, in the year and a half that I have, and really in the year in, I guess, 3 months that I have built my relationship with the Lord, I could tell you at times, like, I've had to figure out different ways to remind myself, hey, He's the way to go. Like, there was a point in time this year where I could sit there and tell you where I was super, super included in things that were about Jesus, right? And for about a good month, I stepped away, and I wasn't really focused on Him and stuff. And I knew I needed to be. I knew I needed to be reading the Bible, continue to study His Word and think about Him, but I just wasn't. And I got a lot of conviction from that. And ever since, I can sit there and say, like, I haven't stopped building my relationship with Him. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But in terms of the things that the Lord has taught you in these last few months, what has He taught you specifically?
Well, so far, what he's taught me in this past couple of months has been to let things go, because my whole life I've been a person who's hold grudges with people who have done me very, very bad, and it's been very long and painful grudges, right? Where I just couldn't let that go. I just couldn't let that pain go. And I will constantly try to seek revenge, which is very, very unhealthy and toxic. Another thing he taught me was that nothing lasts forever. That things happen, and that when good things and bad things happen, it's because of a reason. It's because Lord has a plan for us. And that there's things that are in my control and things that are not in my control. And the things that are not in my control, I gave them to the Lord, because I know He's working out something for me that's going to be greater.
Yeah. He's taught me a lot in this past year, and like I said, I can go down the list of things He's taught me, and one of those things that He has, I'm gonna tell you the different things He's taught me. The big first thing that He taught me is really about forgiveness. Forgiveness is like what you just said, holding a grudge. Because I would say me and you are very similar in that aspect. It's probably why you and me are really close friends.
Yeah.
Because me and you are very, very similar in not every way, but in many different ways. And that grudge is something that I would say we're similar about. It's a pride thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I was holding a grudge for over a year before I finally realized I needed to stop. And the things that He taught me about forgiveness was forgiveness isn't something that's going to happen overnight.
Oh, yeah.
It's something that it takes a lot of time, but it's also something that you really can't do alone. You know what I'm saying? You need help doing it, especially if you were really cut deep on whatever situation it was. And so when I started to forgive, I realized that before I was rushing myself to forgive those different people who had hurt me in the past, and it didn't help with anything really. It just kept making me hate them more and more and more and more and more, until finally I realized I was hating myself at the same time. And that's when I started calling on the Lord and going, please help me. And the first person He had me forgive was a person that you and I both know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say you were really friends with her. I would say you guys were probably kind of friends in high school, but I was really close friends with her in high school. If you haven't heard that story is not up on my other channel anymore. I took it down about a couple months ago. But essentially, there's a reason why people say men and women can't be friends. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason.
That's a whole nother topic, but yeah.
And I essentially, I was like, in my head, I was like, both of us were played by a lot of people in high school. And we are both essentially just graduated. She graduated the year previous to what we graduated, but we graduated the year after. And I said, I think since we both kind of know what each other has been through, I think we should both try and go and try to get into a relationship ourselves, with each other versus everyone else. Since everyone else keeps hurting us and doing us dirty, it made sense. And at the time, I got hurt because everyone knows, like, if you know me personally, you know the story, she ended up choosing some other guy over me or whatever. And it hurt because I was like, we were close friends, what I've been through. I know what you've been through, and you went and did that, right? And at the time, I had this deep-rooted hatred for her, and of course, the other dude, of course, that she chose over me. I had this deep-rooted hatred. And there were so many times when she tried to come back. And here's what I'm going to talk about. We talk about the term spinning the block a lot. Everyone talks about it, where people do someone bad and then they try to turn around and go right back to that person they did wrong, right? And this is going to lead into something else I'm going to say. And I'll get back to what I was saying in a second. But the one thing the Lord has taught me in terms of forgiveness is a lot of people have this tendency to block their blessings. And what do I mean by that is, if you notice something about people nowadays, so many people sit there and they say things like, and whether they believe in God or not, they may say it to their friends, they may be trying to talk to the Lord or whatever about it, talk to their family, whatever, get on social media, say it. Where can I find a nice guy? Where can I find a nice girl?
Yeah.
Where can I find a good guy? Where can I find a good girl? There, in my opinion, there's a difference between a nice guy and a good guy. I've believed that for about over a year now.
Yeah, they don't equal the same anyway. So,
But that's a conversation for another day. But essentially, they don't realize, like, when they're saying this, a lot of times the Lord is in their favor, and they bring them that good guy or good girl, that nice guy or nice girl.
yeah, but then they don't see it, so they think they just block it away, tell the person walk away, and then they wonder why they're not getting that good guy or nice girl and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like it's in front of them, but they don't appreciate it at the moment, and when that person walks away, then they realize, wow, this person was really that nice, that good man, that good woman that came into my life, and I took it away. But I'm not saying this just so if, for people to feel bad, because we'll make mistakes as humans, but just to be aware of the blessings that come into your life, and that people and things happen for a reason, and that God has a greater plan for everybody in this planet.
Yeah. See, what I was gonna say though was you think about it, and whenever God, like what you said, these people don't appreciate it when God brings them that blessing. They take that person for granted. See, I've come to terms with this. I told my mom this and my friend this the other day. I said, and they both agreed with me. They said, or I said this, when the Lord blesses them with these people, right? They take these people for granted in several different ways, or the Lord is essentially testing them once he gives them these people.
Mm-hmm.
What that test consists of is, how are you going to treat the Lord? Are you still going to have the Lord first? Are you going to bring the Lord into your life at all? Or are you just going to continue to ignore the Lord after he just blessed you with this? That's the first thing he's going to do. The second thing is, he's going to be testing to see, how are you treating that person that he just blessed you with? You know what I'm saying? And people don't understand the test. You see, a lot of times they'll fail the test with the Lord in terms of how they treat the Lord, but they really fail the test with how they treat the person the Lord has just blessed them with. So, for example, let's say, like, they take the person for granted. So let's say this. Let's say two people are in a talking stage, a man and a woman, right? They're talking, but she takes him for granted by he's a really great guy. She takes him for granted by using his money for dinner dates and all this other stuff, but she's really not giving him the relationship that he's been wanting to have with her. Let's say she's talking to multiple guys and not just that good guy. See, I've always been someone who, I don't believe in going and talking to numerous people at once, being in a talking stage with numerous people, because you never know how someone actually feels. They could actually end up really liking you and wanting to be with you, but because you're talking to numerous people, you don't see it, and you could choose someone else and it completely hurts the person that actually did like you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's another time of taking someone good for granted. Yeah. There are so many ways you could take someone for granted in a talking stage. And of course, when you're in a relationship with someone, I've been taken for granted in both talking stage and relationships, where it's like, and I'm not going to sit there and say I have not come across good women. I'm not going to sit here and say that. I'm not going to play the victim here. But essentially, you look at, I've been taken advantage of, I've been broken up with, and just like you, I've been broken up with without a really good explanation, and watch the person I really cared about move on, whether it was a few weeks or a few months later, as if what we had didn't mean anything. That's a version of someone taking someone for granted after complaining about how they didn't have anyone nice before they met me. You know what I'm saying? Or someone good before they met me. I've been taken for granted by treating a girl good, and then all of a sudden she goes to date someone else, And so going back to my original thing was this, I saw as this girl that I was friends with at the time, she was essentially doing that, taking me for granted because she was choosing this other guy over me, right? But when she started, every single time, it was over the course of 2 years, I had this huge wall built up in my mind towards her. And it wasn't just her, it's towards all the girls who try to come back to me. Like, there's this huge wall built up. And that's something that I do want to say here is like, a lot of people don't realize is even when you fail that test, the Lord will probably bless you with that test again. He's either going to bring you someone else that's good to you later on in life, or he may even allow you a second chance with that person that you did wrong in the past. Which is why I sit there and I say now, like, I'm not going to be the type anymore to sit there and say, I'm never going to get back with my ex. I'm never going to do this, never get back with someone or try to get with someone else again, because you don't know what the Lord has planned for you. But exactly. I do know this. I do know that if these people who did me dirty in the past do try to come back, I have free will. This is where the concept of free will comes in. I now know that, hey, I have this huge wall built up, right? So all because I let you come back into my life or come back into my life fully does not mean I'm going to make it easy for you.
Yeah.
You know, and this girl, she can attest to that. You know, me and her, you know, we're cool now. We're I wouldn't say we're close friends anymore like how we were back then, but we associate with each other every once in a while. We don't really talk much because I still learned, hey, I need to kind of keep my distance from her. But the last time she tried to come back, at this point, it was 2 years later. And I was like, okay, it's been 2 years. I've still got this huge wall built up towards her. Because it's like, you chose another dude over me. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was like, I was good to you, or trying to be good to you. And then, instead of, at this point, my relationship with the Lord was building. I was building my relationship with the Lord. And instead of sitting there and thinking it with my own mind, I asked the Lord. I said, I asked him, I said, what do you want me to do with her in this situation? She's apologizing again for like the 50,000th time. I want to forgive people now. I don't want to continue to hold any grudge in my heart. What do you want me to do? I put it in his hands. And you know what he said to me? He said, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror. This is the first time I ever really looked at myself in the mirror for any of these situations. I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and realize you didn't really treat her as good as this other dude treated her. What I mean by that was, throughout high school, there was a lot of times where I was super rude to her and super mean to her. I knew it, but I always tried to block it out because I knew that wasn't me. But I pushed her around in a way. Not bullied her, but I pushed her around because it was like all these other girls were doing me the bad, right? Yeah. She never had a crush on me or nothing like that, but it was just like, she's my friend. She should listen to me when I'm screaming or in distress and things like that because she's my friend. That was my thinking back in high school. I don't have that thinking now. But when I heard him say this to me, I did look at myself in the mirror and I was like, you know, he's right. I really did not treat her as great. Now, even though her and the dude she chose over me were not doing things that was of the Lord, which that my business to tell, I knew that, you know, he was right. I didn't treat her as well. So once I realized that, he came and said to me, he said, now I want you to get to know her again. I understand you both are different now, and become friends with her again. That doesn't mean I have to become close friends with her, but at least associate myself with her again. Understand that this is where he wants me to go in life.
So basically, kind of like a diplomatic relationship where you'll get along, but it's not the same anymore. But at the same time, you're forgiving her for everything she did to you. Exactly.
We're not as close as we once were, but you know, every once in a while we'll associate ourselves. We'll check on each other and things like that. Yeah. And so I learned specifically, and that was last year, but really come this year, as in like really a month ago, I learned from him more about forgiveness. Throughout this whole year, he's been teaching me forgiveness, but I learned more about forgiveness and learned like it's okay to forgive people. Take your time in forgiving people. Yeah. Understand that when you forgive them, you don't have to let them back in your life. But if you do, understand that you don't have to be close to them anymore. But also learn to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, this is my issue here. This is my issue at that point in time. Let me fix this issue before I sit there and start sitting there and blaming other people. You know what I'm saying? Because and sorry, not to cut you off,
fine, yeah.
but also the one thing is, when I had that conversation with her back then, the Lord pointed out this to me. He said, notice how she actually understands how she was wrong back then too. You know what I'm saying? There, like, he understood that she did me wrong, but there was both aspects where we both did each other wrong, and it was like, okay, now she sees where she's wrong. Because around that time, like I said, she probably thought what she was doing was the correct thing to do. She chose the guy who treated her more kind than what I did at the time, and that's fine, you know. Because I look back at it now, and I'm like, I don't blame her, you know. Like, if I'm in her situation, I do the same thing, you know. Like, if there's two girls who they want me, one of them is super rude to me at times, can be still nice to me, but at times super rude to me, but the other one is treating me like how I like to be treated, then it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go for that person who's treating me like I want to be treated. So yeah. I don't blame her anymore, you know what I'm saying? So but what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I had a similar situation where, yes, a lot of girls have done me dirty, but not just girls. Everybody has done me dirty in some kind of way, or a lot of people have done me dirty in some kind of way. But also, at first I was like, oh my God, what did I do to the world and everything? But then I realized, and I looked at myself, and I was like, well, I've also done very bad things to other people, right? Mm-hmm. And I've rejected people who wanted me better just for somebody else, just because I kind of saw something that, like, was not true in the end. And I realized that in the end, we all make mistakes as humans, right? And thankfully, I've taken my time to forgive some people that have really done me bad, but also they have forgiven me for what I've done to them. So I think the biggest thing that the Lord taught me was forgiveness and to let things go. Because think about it, when you hold grudge with somebody, not only you block yourself, or you prevent yourself from being analyzed on how you actually treated them, but also you always have this constant anger, this constant draining. I feel like when somebody has grudge on somebody for a very, very long time and is constantly trying to find ways to get revenge, they feel so drained. Like, it feels like their soul is being drained with just hate and hate and hate. And when you just let it go and you just forgive and you let the Lord take over, you feel so relieved and so much better.
Yeah. And that's another thing, like, in terms of also, he's also with that same, in that same realm, that same area, he has also taught me to be more sympathetic to situations.
Yes.
Now, there is still some situations where I look at and I go, Lord, how in the world can I be sympathetic to that right there? Like, like you said, like, so when people, like, for example, like you said, like, when people make the wrong choice in terms of relationships. So let's say there's a dude, he's got two women that want him, and he sees one treats him bad, or treats him okay, but she treats him worse than the other. The one who's treating him way worse than the other, she's just way more physically attractive. Mm-hmm. The other one treats him better, but he just he finds her attractive, but not as physically attractive as this one. So he chooses the one he finds more physically attractive for his looks.
I've been that person.
Or for the looks of her. And that's an issue that's hard to be sympathetic for, because it's like, dude, you saw how she was treating you and you chose her. And now all of a sudden you're dealing with all these issues and you're complaining about it. Another example is, vice versa for women. I've been through that situation before. I've talked about it, I think, on this podcast before. It was a while ago, like sometime beginning of this year. I was talking to this one girl, you remember, back in 2022, and she chose this other guy over me. She came back and told her friends, we had mutual friends at the same time, who came back and told me that she said that essentially I was the better choice, that she wishes in a way she chose me. Because I just treated her so much better than what he did. But she chose him because he was older, so he had a little more experience under his belt in terms of life, and also because of the fact that he was more established in his career and I'm still just a college student. You know, at that time I was about to go into my junior year of college, into our junior year of college.
Yeah.
You know, now we're seniors in college.
Crazy.
But
Time flies, yeah.
or no. No, we were about to go into our sophomore year of college because that's 2022, not junior
yeah.
year.
Yeah.
We were about to go into our sophomore years of college at that time, you know. So yeah, it's been 2 years. But she chose him, but she came back and told some mutual friends that she wished she chose me because of the situation she's now in with, or she was now in it with that dude at that point in time, you know. And like in situations like that, it's hard to be sympathetic for people because it's like you see how people treat you.
Yeah.
But you still choose to not go for the other. No wonder this was off.
What happened?
It looks like it's on, but it wasn't on. The mic wasn't on.
Okay. Well, anyways.
Yeah, we can edit that part out.
Yeah.
But essentially, the next thing he taught me was to not compare yourself to other people.
Oh yeah, that's something that he taught me, but it's taken me a long time to accept that.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. The one thing that I know about that is it is one of the hardest things to not do is compare yourself. Especially like going back to relationships, especially when you see other people in relationships with with people that they chose over you and things like that. So like take for example, I'll use my ex for example. There are still times nowadays where even though like I've moved on in my life and I'm genuinely happy and I know one day the Lord is going to bless me with someone who will end up being my wife, you know. There are still times where I think back to that situation, and like this also goes back to where he says don't dwell on the past as well, where I sit there and not only do I get upset, but I kind of compare myself to her boyfriend if they're still together. I have no clue if they're still together. I personally don't care, but I'll compare myself for a second, and I'll compare myself for a second, and I'm like, dang, like she really chose that dude over me though. Like she left me and then got with that dude later on instead of coming back. It's like I did nothing but treat her right, but I understand like the Lord, she is not in the Lord's plan for me, you know, like the Lord used her to teach me a lesson, you know what I'm saying, that I'm happy he taught me because it told me, hey, I need to grow up.
Yeah, and then that actually, another thing that affects the comparison is social media. And I'm pretty sure for our audience here that's watching us at this very moment, you know, we all have Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube and things like that. And when you see social media so much, you see that people post stuff that may be true or not true. You're like, dang, why am I not like this person? Why am I not like this? This person's doing better than me. Why am I not there? And you start pressuring yourself and you pressure yourself. And when you pressure yourself, you turn away from the Lord. And when that happens, you kind of lose your mind in the sense of like your mental health decreases because you're trying so hard to prove over others that you have talent, that you have your skills and stuff, when in reality, that's not what the Lord wants. And on top of that, it doesn't help you either in any aspect of life, but what it does is that it makes you hate yourself even more and lower your self-esteem. So comparison is very, very hard to let go, especially in today's world where everybody's constantly comparing each other. But when you just let the Lord take over your life and plan everything out for you, then things get better in life and you feel more satisfied and more happy.
Oh yeah, 100%. And the thing about the comparison thing is it goes hand in hand with idolization.
Exactly.
You know, the Lord tells us not to idolize anyone, or not to have idols. He is the only person we should be idolizing, y'all. Or the only entity we should be idolizing. You know, Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And you know, the biggest thing that people idolize so much nowadays is celebrities. You know what I'm saying? Like celebrities are the big thing people idolize. We all see what's going on with P. Diddy right now.
Oh my God, the 1,000. We're not gonna talk about that.
The thousand lotions and baby oils is crazy work. But you know, they also found other things in his house. They found videotapes. They found not just the videotapes, but they found illegal guns and illegal drugs, all that stuff in his house. And it's crazy because, like, you know, people grew up listening to P Diddy. I grew up listening to a couple P Diddy songs. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll Be Missing You. What's that one he did with Biggie? He has one that's really good with Biggie. More money, more problems. That one. And then he has what's it called? I Need a Girl Part 2. Another P Diddy classic. I can't even lie to you. That's my favorite P Diddy song. But essentially, when it comes to those tracks, right? Or not, we're not talking about tracks, we're not talking about music. But when it comes to the celebrities, it's so crazy because like I said, people catch themselves idolizing them for numerous reasons, you know. Myself, like in internet celebrities as well, like myself, back in high school, I idolized YouTube star Pretty Boy Fredo a lot, you know, because I saw the lifestyle he was living and I wanted to live that lifestyle too. And there's nothing wrong with being inspired by people. There's nothing wrong. Like, I'm sure a lot of us look at someone like Michael Jordan and are inspired by him. You know what I'm saying? But getting to the point to where you're idolizing someone like how these girls are now idolizing Duke Dennis and Chris Brown. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. Another, and like letting them influence how you live your life. You know what I'm saying? A prime example of that I've seen someone who is influencing people's lives is Meg Thee Stallion, right?
Oh yeah.
Now everyone who knows me personally knows I'm not a Meg Thee Stallion fan at all. I'm not, like, and whenever I talk, I ain't gonna lie, like that Tory case, it did hurt me as a fan of Tory Lanez. I can sit there and tell you it did sting a little bit. You know, I love Tory Lanez music, and I want to say this about secular music real quick. It's fine listening to secular music as a Christian as long as you understand the difference between that and living your life to how you're supposed to live your life. Understanding the differences between living that way and living your life for Jesus. You know, I don't every single time I listen to a secular song, I don't live that way. You know, I'm like, hey, they want to live their life that way, that's cool. And a lot of times I will get some conviction listening to some secular songs, but a lot of times I don't, because I understand my own relationship with the Lord. Yeah. And I'll get into that in a second, which is another thing he taught me. But sticking with the idolization right now and the comparison, you know, for me, whenever I talked about my problems with Meg Thee Stallion right before, it was personal to me. And it was because of the Tory Lanez case. It was because, you know, my ex-girlfriend, going back to the comparison, was a big fan of Meg Thee Stallion. And I saw that Meg Thee Stallion, if my ex-girlfriend was to ever see this, she may deny it, but I saw it, right? Her listening to Meg Thee Stallion influenced a lot of her life and how she lived her life. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I took that personal, especially by how our relationship ended. It, like, I'm not going to go into that, but essentially, I took it personal. I don't take the things I got with Meg Thee Stallion personal anymore, but I do look at it and I go, yo, like, I just don't like the way how she influences people. It's kind of the same way, like, the same gripe I got with people like Future. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. How Future influences all these men to treat all these women terribly. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I get it. These men and women, they go through things previously in their lives that helps them be heavily influenced by these celebrities like Future and Meg Thee Stallion. But it's like, I don't know, because I was there at some point, which is why I don't get upset too much anymore. Yeah. But I have that understanding of when I let that influence my life, it wasn't fun for me, you know? And so that's why I say, like, don't let it idolize you too much. You know, you got anything to say, Dad, to that?
Yeah, so for example, also the reason why it's really bad to idolize celebrities is because you never know what they're really doing. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff they rap about, they sing about, or they speak about, is not necessarily true. In the sense of, like, for example, I've known plenty of rappers like Anuel A, some Spanish rappers, because, you know, I speak Spanish and stuff, that talk about, like, gang stuff when they've never been in a gang, they never come from poverty, they never come from the hood, so they could be lying about that stuff, and then since you're listening to them, you could apply to real life, and that can get you in trouble, that can get you shot, that can get you in jail. But the point isn't just to, like, saying that rap music is bad. No, I listen to rap a lot, but the point is that when you take literally what everything they say and you apply it to real life, that can get you into some problems. And on top of that, you never know who they really are. Let's talk about, for example, we just talked about P. Diddy. Let's talk about Drake. Let's talk about Mr. Beast. Let's talk about Chris Tyson. You know, in public, at first, we thought they were great people. And then lately this year, we have been exposed or shown that they have really dark paths and they've been caught with some really dark stuff. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's kind of what I have to do with celebrity. That's why the only thing we have to idolize is the Lord, because the Lord is pure and perfect, whereas celebrities is just like humans like you and I. They make mistakes, and on top of that, lately many celebrities that many people idolize have been caught with very dark things.
Yeah. Another example, and this one isn't even a bad example. Like, she hasn't done anything bad, but a rapper who has literally come out and said in an interview, she said this last year, I believe, that she doesn't, like, things she raps about in her songs, like cheating on her man and stuff, she doesn't do any of that. In fact, she doesn't even believe in any of that stuff, and that's Lotto. You know, I find Lotto very attractive. I think Lotto is a very underrated rapper. Yeah. You know, but she's come out and said it. She said in an interview last year that she doesn't believe in any of the stuff she raps about, but she raps about it because she knows it's gonna get people jumping and popping and lit. You know what I'm saying?
People, and sometimes they rap about that kind of stuff because he knows it's what people want to hear. It's what gets more clicks, and more clicks equals more money. Which, you know, in a way, I get it. You know, it's like a business mindset. You just want to make money and stuff, right? On top of what you like to do about singing and things, right? But then the thing is that most people idolize them and they influence people. And it's not that's not the main problem with celebrities. The problem is that people take literally what they say and they apply it to real life. We can really mess them up in the future. You know, for example, how we were talking about with Megan Thee Stallion, how, you know, most girls, when they listen to Megan Thee Stallion, they're like, oh no, I should cheat on my man. I don't need a man. I need to go out and party. And then most women, what happened is in a matter of years and stuff, most of those women end up alone with no man takes them seriously. They end up single with 3 kids and, you know, all that stuff, right? Because they literally took something that's not real and applied a wrong mindset to their life, and then it really messed them up and also turned them away from the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and going back to what I was saying earlier, one thing that the Lord has also taught me was other than, you know, forgiveness, comparison, and idolization, the Lord also has taught me about what was I gonna say?
Okay, so basically what I'm saying is that historically the church have committed many murders and killed historically, like in the Middle Ages and things like that. And although this is not very recent, what it shows is that if you see Christianity as a religion, it's very hypocrite, because, you know, Jesus says to love us one another, right? Mm-hmm. And then the church is like, well, no, you did this, you committed the sin, and then they will like burn people to the stake, torture them to death and things like that, because the Pope said it, even though that Jesus says to love each other one another. That's where I see the hypocrisy, number one. And number two, another way I see the hypocrisy is the amount of denominations that there's in Christianity.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say that the denominations are the hypocrisy that I've noticed, but it's going to lead into the point I'm going to say, okay? So, like you said, you notice the many different denominations, right? You got the Christian Catholic, Christian Baptist, Christian non-denominational, you know, all these different denominations. I'm a non-denominational, you know, and do you want to disclose what you...
I am Catholic, but I'm kind of leaning to non-denominational, so, but,
okay.
Yeah.
So, essentially, the one thing that I will sit there and I say I've noticed is when it comes to, you know, the different denominations, it all stems from what people believe from the Bible or how they interpret the Bible. So, the one thing I would say is this: not all of us interpret the Bible the same.
Exactly.
So even when you're a part of one certain denomination, doesn't mean you're going to interpret the Bible the same as someone else in that denomination. So a prime example would be politics, for example, right? I'm someone who I will be the first to sit there and tell you I do not care about politics. I know I couldn't care less. That's something that I would say I've also come even more to terms with in my relationship with the Lord is, to me, politics just don't matter as much. But that's besides the point. I mean, that's for a whole other video. Yeah. But essentially, you got Democrats, Republicans, right? So for Democrats, right, a lot of them will say they support the LGBTQ community. But there are also a lot of Democrats who don't support that community, you know? In Republicans, there will be Republicans who say they don't support interracial couples. But there are a lot of Republicans who say they're fine with interracial couples. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it varies, you know? That's a political example for those who don't really understand what I'm saying yet. So the point is, a lot of Christians pick and choose in the Bible what to apply to their life versus applying the whole Bible to their life.
Yeah.
The whole thing is God's word. Now, yes, a lot of Christians like to say that, hey, well, when Jesus came and died on the cross for us, a lot of the old law was dispersed of, right? One of the reasons why you sit there and you see Christians do things like get tattoos on them now. But, you know, I've seen, like, for example, right? I don't got tattoos. One day I may get tattoos. I don't know, but I don't got tattoos. I feel like if I ever get tattoos, I may miss the way my skin looks now. You know what I'm saying? But I'll be the first to sit there and tell you that I eat pork. You know, I love eating pork. But in the Bible, specifically in the Old Testament, it says we shouldn't eat pork.
Yep.
You know, for reasons. But there are many Christians nowadays who still don't eat pork. You know what I'm saying? Like, but guess what? They got tattoos on their body though. They say they don't eat pork for religious reasons, but they got tattoos on their body. You know what I'm saying? And they claim they're Christians. So it's like things like that. But a prime example I can give you is what I saw on TikTok the other day. Basically, there was this street preacher and this other preacher walked up to him basically to debate the Bible. And the reason I don't debate the Bible with people is because so many of us interpret it differently. So I don't see a point to debating what's in the Bible or what's being interpreted in the Bible. But essentially, she goes and the preacher who's not the street preacher, the preacher who walked up to the street preacher, she starts talking about how the Lord actually loves the LGBTQ community. Well, I can sit there and say to her, let's say I was a street preacher, right? What he was basically saying to her is, the Lord does not love the LGBTQ community. He loves them, but as people, as his creation. But he does not love what they do.
Yeah.
Right. And so the thing is, and he started pointing out every single Bible verse where it clearly shows that the Lord has no love for people who do that. Or not love for people, but no love for that specific action that people do. And whenever people sit there and act like, so one thing that always, and like I said, if you're in the LGBTQ community, you know, you do you. I got no problem with you. I can't judge you for what you do.
Yeah, exactly. We don't discriminate here, so don't worry, guys.
I will sit there and tell you this. Whenever people sit there and someone from the LGBTQ community come and say to me, God made them that way, right? I always tell them, if you want to believe that, that's up to you. But I personally don't believe that. And they'll ask me, why don't you believe that? Why do you believe it's this way, not that way? You know? And nowadays, I will sit there and say, well, if you read the Bible, there's one specific time you got to understand where God, literally at the beginning of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, he kills or destroys 2 cities in surrounding towns that were filled with people like you. You know, like people who were who was doing things that would be proclaimed in the LGBTQ community. And it doesn't mean he hated them, but he thought the things you guys are doing was so wicked. And you got to understand this. The Lord is the same. He never changes.
Yeah.
He's always been the same. And so to say that the Lord made you that way when clearly on many different parts in the Bible, he did not make you that way. Not just stated in the Old, but also the New Testament on many different occasions. It's like, okay, let's be real here. He did not make you that way. You made that choice. And the reason you're saying God made you that way is to justify what you're doing. Because here's something my pastor said. My pastor said, all because you're a creation of God does not mean you are God's child.
Yeah.
And I 100% agree with that statement. Because if you're not proclaiming the Lord, or if you're using things to twist his words in the Bible and things of that nature, are you really a child of God, or are you someone who's just trying to use his word to best fit your claim on life? You know what I'm saying? Another example, I have a friend, and essentially earlier this year, him and I, this is the time where I decided I'm never getting into another argument with someone about what's discussed in the Bible, right? Because in this one I realized it's really interpreted differently depending on who you are. Essentially, we were discussing, right, sex before marriage. And I told him, Jesus' words, the words of the Lord himself said this. He said, anytime a man looks at a woman with lust in his eyes, with lustful intentions, he's already committed adultery with her. You know what I'm saying? Vice versa, same for women, right? If they look at a man with that, right? And specifically, this is before marriage, right? And he didn't view it that way. He viewed it as you're only committing adultery. He didn't take what Jesus said. He said you're only committing adultery whenever you're married and you're cheating on your spouse. And I'm like, that's true. But that you're taking the worldly definition, but you're not taking the spiritual definition that the Lord gave you, that Jesus said. You know what I'm saying? So I view it as anytime you're, and I think I can't judge anyone for doing it, because
I've done it, you've done it, like
everybody
has done it.
I ain't gonna lie, y'all, I've been there.
I've been there
I
too.
went crazy.
I'm gonna be honest, but the thing is that there's always room to change. But anyways,
and the thing is, I can't judge anyone because I don't know what the future holds. I could end up doing that again. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You never know. I can't say I've done it in a long time, but hey. But the thing is I take what the Lord said, and anytime, if I was to sit there and fornicate with someone before marriage, I've just committed adultery. I'll take that as what he said. But if someone doesn't want to take that as what they said, then that's fine. Like, hey, you live your life how you want to live it, because the Lord gave you free will. But understand that when it's all said and done, these are things that you're gonna have to take up with Him. Yeah. You know, I can't judge you, because the Lord also told us to not judge others before, especially if we're not looking at ourselves in the mirror.
Exactly.
Like I said, this goes back to what I talked about earlier, how the Lord said he made me look at myself in the mirror. The other day I sat there and I asked him, because I was upset, and I was upset, and I don't discuss when I'm upset with a lot of people anymore, like even with some friends, because in my opinion, I'd rather go to the Lord for everything now. And I sat there and I was talking to him, because he knew something was off. Obviously, he always knows. And I was like, Lord, please show me in every situation where I've done and where I got hurt in the past. Show me where I was wrong. And he did. I started going down the list in my head of every single situation where I felt like I got done wrong. And I started to see what could I have done differently. Yeah. And there's nothing I regret, because what is there? Yeah, there's things to regret, but I mean, there's nothing I could change. I just have to live with it. But ever since, it's like, okay, he's just been teaching me these different things. But that's everything that he has essentially taught me. And like I said, there's still more to learn. And the one thing I will say to some of y'all Christians is, I think some Christians also don't realize that once they think they've studied the Bible enough and grew into it enough, that their learning has stopped at some point. Or not that their learning has stopped, but they think that someone who is just getting into the Bible and just getting into their relationship with the Lord can't teach them something about the Lord. You know what I'm saying? Yes, everyone's relationship with the Lord is different. That's just a fact. That's a full-blown fact. There are going to be similarities, but everyone's relationship with Him is different. I also had a friend as well, who also has a relationship with Jesus. And there's some things that they will correct me on, and I 100% take that. But there are also things like I said with the adultery thing. This same person was the same person that said what adultery was in their eyes, and that kind of just ignored what Jesus said. And the thing is, when they were saying this, they also would say, I studied the Bible full through growing up and everything. The issue I had with that was, it's like you're not letting anyone who is learning things about the Lord for themselves come and tell you what they've learned.
Yeah.
And to try and show you that you can be wrong in a certain aspect.
Yeah, it's like they're not being open to like new interpretations and stuff, and that way they're like blocking themselves from learning more about the Lord.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, the Lord does not want us to be set in our ways. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, like I said, everyone has their own interpretation of the Lord, but understand that it's like, so we had a men's meeting at church the other day. You should definitely come one day.
Yeah, for sure.
It's on some, they schedule it on Saturday morning. It's like once every month. But essentially, we discussed how even us as the youth can go and tell the people who are older than us, people who are in their 50s, 60s, when they're wrong in a certain aspect. Whether they like it or not, they have to be held accountable.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to know when to correct somebody, because if you're not allowing someone to correct you, how are you going to know where the line is? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Where to draw the
line.
line.
How are you going to know what you're doing wrong, and how can you like fix it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. But that's about everything I've essentially learned in my relationship with the Lord, you know, but I definitely would encourage people to start looking into it more for themselves, for sure.
Yeah. And also encourage people who are watching this podcast to get closer to God, because in the end, your life will be much, much better if you get closer to God. It may not seem like it yet, but just let God work on your life and plan out what the future that they uphold towards you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you want to add before we end this?
No, just, the only thing I said is, if you're ever going through a really tough situation, or there's some stuff that you don't know for sure what to do, always get close to the Lord. I'm not saying that, like, you know, don't go to, if it's something very serious, don't get like, man, go to a therapist or a psychiatrist and stuff. No, that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is turn to the Lord in case you don't have it figured out, because God will figure it out for you and will plan it out for you. That's everything I have to say.
You literally just, I don't know, that statement just reminded of something I was thinking about saying when we started this. You know, I've talked about, I grew up in a Jesus-centered household. You know?
Yes.
So, but the one thing being the only, other than my father being the only male in the household, there's, of course, my two sisters and my mom. And then on my mom's side and my dad's side, it's mainly women as well. I was pushed so much more to do certain things than what my sisters were, or a lot of people were, you know? And there's a lot of times where people all to this day ask me, like, since I was a little kid, ask me, what do you want to do in life? What do you want to do in life? What do you want to do when you grow up? All this stuff. And I'm someone who, I get why people ask that. But at the same time, I'm not going to push anybody. Like, yes, I'm going to, like, when I have kids, I want to push them to be the best they can possibly be. Any parent needs to do that. Yeah. But if they don't know, because that's the thing, whenever I sit there and I come out and it's like, I don't have a clue. Like, I have a more of a clue what I want to do now than anything. Like, I know what I want to do. But if this was last year or beginning of this year, I still almost didn't have a clue on what the planet was for me. Right. And it's like, at that point in time, I was a junior in college, about to become a senior in all this stuff. You know, I'm a senior in college now. But the thing was people always ask me, what do you want to do with your life? And whenever I sit there and it's like I didn't have a plan or something, they would look at me as if I was running too late or something, as if I was behind or something like that.
Yeah, that happened to me. I can relate to that.
But the problem, here's what I would say to those people. They got to a point to where, especially this year, or really for a long time, always knew to never worry. Like, even when I did worry, it was always something. Even before I started building my relationship with Jesus, it was always, never worry because I got a feeling I'm going to be great in this life one day. And I sat there, and this year, the thought of being worried, just anytime I think about the future, it doesn't ever bother me anymore. Like, I don't get worried or nothing like that anymore because of my relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
So now, even when I feel like I don't know where I'm going, I find that okay. Because it's like, even if I don't know where I'm going, the Lord continuously reveals things to me. Like, he revealed more of my plan to me just a week ago. It's like, people's timing on things is different. There are people who they have no idea what they're going to do until they're 25.
Yeah.
And they end up 5 years later being super successful. You know, like you don't really know what you want to do. And the thing is, I got my trust in the Lord. So even when I sit there and I know what I want to do now, and I'm definitely planning on doing it. Don't get me wrong. But I got my trust in the Lord. So for all I know, I could sit there and want to do this, and then tomorrow the Lord's plan could change for me. He could end up giving me something else different and being like, okay, I don't want you to do this anymore. Go do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't understand. I think people want to understand that, but they can't understand that sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Because, like, we have something called free will. So when we set our goals, I feel like people turn their dreams into necessities. Meaning, if they don't work out, people, like, completely get super frustrated and they lose hope of any kind. Which is why I say, once again, you have to let everything, give it to God, because God has a plan for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Like, and like I said, it's just a crazy thing that, and like I said, this is why I never get mad at anyone when they say like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm doing" or things of that nature for their future, because it's like, first off, it's your future, it's your life, you do what you want to do. Yeah. But also, it's like I said, the Lord's plan and timing for everyone is different.
Exactly.
And that goes back to, like I said, going back to what we talked about earlier with comparison, why you shouldn't compare yourself to people, because everyone's life is different. All because this person may have found their way faster than you are doesn't mean you're behind.
Exactly.
You know? And so, but yeah, I'm happy you were saying all that, because it did remind me of that for a second. But yeah, that's about all I gotta say.
Me too. I think that's everything I have to say.
All right. Well. Yeah, make sure y'all go follow Enrique on Instagram. His Instagram will be in the description down below. You want to be followed on Facebook too?
Yeah, sure. Just follow me, Enrique Macomi. Check out my Facebook, check out my Instagram, my Snapchat, and I'll definitely be around more. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you remember, follow True Kings Podcast. We're now on TikTok, guys. We got some podcast videos, podcast clips on TikTok now. I'm very excited for that. Make sure y'all go follow us on TikTok. Go follow on Instagram, and y'all stay blessed. Peace.